Hi everyone and welcome to Priority Holder, and today we're playing Jundergrowth, aka Creature Self-Mill, in the Explorer format. Now, for the longest time I've been fascinated with collecting creatures in your graveyard, and this started with cards like Boneyard Worm and Splinter Fright. Now flash forward to when Arena comes out, one of the early sets on there was Guilds of Ravnica, which introduced the Undergrowth mechanic. Now, you could see in the sideboard I have some of the old guard that's been cut over time, but one example of Undergrowth, is Lotleth Giant, whose Undergrowth deals 1 to each opponent for each creature you have in your graveyard. But I don't know about you, I've done a lot more with the Lotleth. Back to the main deck, we have mostly 2 categories. We have enablers and payoffs, and the best enabler is Stitcher Supplier, which mills you for 3 whenever it enters the battlefield or dies. So it doesn't get better than that, but we've recently picked up Gnawing Vermin, which can mill us a little bit, and it helps just to have another early play that is on plan. Other huge upgrades in sort of the enabler department are Satyr Wayfinder and Blanchwood Prowler, each of which mill you and can give you some card advantage by putting lands in your hand, which is just wonderful, really good. Then moving over to the payoff side, the 2 big whammies we have are Urborg Lhurgoyf and Fiend Artisan, both of which scale according to the number of creatures in your graveyard, so the more the merrier. And we also have a couple cards that can reanimate themselves, Kroxa and Tenacious Underdog. And then Plaguecrafters are nice, they fill up our graveyard, and we just have a lot of expendable creatures floating around. And we have a single Chupacabra as sort of a toolbox piece, because Fiend Artisan can fetch things up. So anyway, that's the plan, is to just mill ourselves for a bunch, and then slam with huge Lhurgoyfs and Fiend Artisans. So anyway, let's jump into some games. Alright, pretty good hand. Mixture of land spells. And among our spells we have a enabler and a payoff. So very happy to see that. Alright, Pelt Collector from our opponent. Usually mono green aggro is what that signifies. Go ahead and leave it Proving Ground. So, very happy to not see a turn 2 play from them. So the argument for Lhurgoyf right now is to mill next turn and to have a big attacker, but it is more vulnerable against the green style of removal, so I opt for Satyr Wayfinder first to try and juice up the Lhurgoyf ahead of time. Let's see what the opponent does. Alright, so they go ahead and use Primal Might. Very happy to see this. We want creatures in our graveyard anyway, and that was a very low priority creature for us. Now there's a couple options. We could just play Lhurgoyf and hold up Necrotic Wound. I opt just to kick it here and just try and make it really large. And we happen to spike a couple more creatures, so it's already sitting at 5-6, which makes us pretty happy. Forest from the opponent into Questing Beast. And among the couple paragraphs it has on it, it has Death Touch, so opt for the no block because we have multiple ways to take it down. So we could just run out Chupacabra, but I see Stitcher Supplier, realize that could juice up the Lhurgoyf really huge, but opponent already seen enough. So very happy to see that they saw the writing on the wall already, that our creatures are just gonna be massive. Alright, Hopeful Initiative from the opponent. And fortunately pulled an untapped source, so we're able to play Gnawing Vermin turn 1. The argument against keeping this hand was the double tap lands to start off with, but Overgrown Tomb really helped remedy that. New card for me, Coppercoat Vanguard, like a sort of pseudo lord for humans, but the ward 1 is just such a pain, because normally we'd be able to snap off this block with the vermin and then give the initiate -1/-1 afterwards, but the ward would just counter it, so that's sort of a brutal combination right there. Ward 1 is going to be a thorn on our side a little bit. So go ahead and play Blanchwood Prowler, grab a land, start building up creatures, pass the old turn. And Nightmare Scenario, another Coppercoat Vanguard. An opponent attacks with both. Now, basically the whole game hinges on this turn right here, and I think I make a critical mistake. I was so hyper-focused on the Plaguecrafters and like having sacrifice fodder for them. I think really should have snapped off the double block. They might have had something anyway, but I could have taken at least some of the ward away and then just used Plaguecrafter as an edict if I had to, just to keep trimming their forces down. So I think that was a pretty poor play by me. And you know, we like creatures in the graveyard anyway, so I think chump blocking there was about the worst thing I could have done. Okay, so opponent sacrifices the initiate, and we're forced to target one of their warded up vanguards, so it does nothing. But at least Plaguecrafter can trade with their creatures currently. Adeline is a big problem because she keeps generating more humans for them, not to mention that they're attacking. So I'm able to attempt to block right here. An opponent has a 1 mana protection spell. So they probably could have blown out our double block last turn anyway. We would have been in a pretty tough situation as is. There may have been no winning this game given what the opponent was able to do. And the fact that everything has at least one instance of ward just makes everything really rough. Like, we can't even just fire off Necrotic Wound, and then it's just throwing off our double spelling all the ward. So best we can do is play Lhurgoyf and then Necrotic Wound through the ward. And honestly, we're almost dead just as is. Actually, we are dead because of Mutavault, so I forgot that. And yeah, they attack in with everything. Adeline gives them even more, and we are donezo. So just got dumpstered by humans right there, so hopefully we can recover. This is a hand that needs some help. We have all enablers. We have some interaction, at least. Fiend Artisan, there we go. So there's our payoff. And let's see how Stitcher Supplier treats us right now. And just the old-fashioned triple creatures in the bin. So all of a sudden, our Fiend Artisan's looking really great already, especially against a red-based deck. Our 10th District Legionnaire. So opponent's sort of like on the hasty prowess plan. We are very happy to snap off this block to juice up our Fiend Artisan. So Supplier hits the bin and mills 2 more creatures. So already you could see like our Undergrowth count is at 6. So we're able to just slam a 7/7 Fiend Artisan right here. And we have Necrotic Wounds and Satyr Wayfinder. Like, things are looking really great right now. And opponent's thinking, and I mean, turn 2 7/7's not too shabby, and opponent's like, yeah, I can't deal with that, and quits. So this is why we play. Alright. So opt for the tap land. This is another good hand, mix of enablers and payoffs. Opt to lead with the enabler instead of the payoff. You know, there's always the chance, you know, throw out Fiend Artisan, then follow up with the mill. Opt to play it a little safer first. Not to mention, would like a third land there, so that's another argument for Blanchwood Prowler. Still holding off on Fiend Artisan, waiting till we could really juice up the graveyard a bit more. Throw out Tenacious Underdog. Still trying to see what we're facing from the opponent here. Graveyard Trespasser. So it's looking like mono black mid-range. Interestingly, they eat our land. I'm not sure what their rationale is on that, but yeah, I guess they haven't seen any of our creature and graveyard payoffs yet, but we still have a creature in the graveyard. Plaguecrafter is just a nice, clean answer. We don't like. Okay, so not the most clean answer because they have Bankbuster, but we got rid of the one we wanted to get rid of anyway. Chupacabra, like, we could have paid the ward cost, but really didn't feel like discarding, so holding on to that. The opponent slams Sheoldred the Apocalypse, and they pass to us, and we're going to get dinged by Sheoldred. Now we get hit by that. And decide, you know, Sheoldred's just going to be too much of a problem. You know, we're not in the worst shape against it right now. but just gonna use Chupacabra to take down Shieldred. Opponent is able to just crew up Bankbuster again and just ward off. So they just keep warding off our attacks with Bankbuster, so it's doing a lot of work for them. Okay, Urborg Scavengers, new card for me, but it's some graveyard hate. They end up grabbing from their graveyard just to pick up Death Touch for good measure. And I mean, life is just pretty good for us right now. Like, they're not doing anything to us. We're able to just keep powering up our graveyard here. And the combination of Blanchwood Prowlers and Satyr Wayfinders to just really help keep the mana situation great throughout the game. So I'm trying to decide whether to use Necrotic Wound or roll out Urborg Lhurgoyf kicked. Decide to sort of try and set a trap right here. And the opponent, you know, crews up the Bankbuster just to try and eat one of our creatures. So what we're going to do here is use Necrotic Wound to shrink Bankbuster to a 1/1. And so that's going to allow our creatures to all survive. Okay, so opponent has cut down for the underdog, which we honestly don't even mind being in the graveyard. We'll get it back later. And then we're going to just dump a Fiend Artisan here, keep the Lhurgoyf because we can kick it next turn. With 5 mana, we can Fiend Artisan, kicked Lhurgoyf, and life will be pretty good. Alright, so opponent has Hero's Downfall, takes out Fiend Artisan. So they're fighting the good fight. They're trimming down like our strong things, and they just have lots of Death Touch, so they're wanting to just trade creatures like crazy. And now we could see why they ate up the underdog, because they knew they could... Oh, sorry, why they killed it, because they knew they could eat it up out of the graveyard. So we take a pretty big hit, but we're just not worried. Like, we're ready to rumble with... I mean, 3 of our, like, our, you know, super payoffs in hand right here. We will have to get through multiple Death Touchers, but it seems alright. So we're going to go ahead and just single kick Lhurgoyf. Alright, we get 2 more creatures. We do find Kroxa. We're 1 red source away, but it's nice to be able to have that safety net in there. And here's the part of the game where we just start slamming huge creatures. So, alright, another Hero's Downfall. Cuts it down, but it just makes everything stronger, so... Snap off the double block here just to get rid of the Death Toucher and the life gain source. Alright, so a 9/10 can attack in through their 4/4. It seems like they would trade right here. Like, there's some argument for keeping it back to try and eat Kroxa, but the opponent's in big trouble if they don't draw anything. So they trade with each other, but we got reinforcements. So we can kick another Lhurgoyf and then just run out another one. And so, just like that, you know, no big deal, 25 power on the board. Land from the opponent. Another Shieldred. Shieldred is very strong, but it's not looking great in the face of what we have. And so I spent a little time calculating here. We're 1 short of lethal, as is. I was trying to see if there's anything I was missing. So, go ahead and just animate Hive, attack in, and, you know, opponent's holding out for something, but, you know, there basically is nothing that could save them at this point. We got a creature land, we got other things going on, and that is it for the opponent. On to the next one. Another good hand with, you know, enabler and payoff action. Red-black Temple from the opponent. And wow, what an amazing draw. Stitcher Supplier is exactly what the doctor ordered there. Start the mill train going and get 2 creatures in the graveyard. Alright. Tap land into Thoughtseize. I fully expected them to take Fiend Artisan, but very surprised when they take Plaguecrafter. So it must be they must not have like a lot of threats and are worried about the edict effects, but we're happy to see, you know, a backup Fiend Artisan. So thanks to Stitcher Supplier, Fiend Artisan's already pretty strong, so we just slam it turn 2, and the next turn's probably gonna be like Satyr Wayfinder. Blood Tide Harvester from the opponent. So it looks like they're like red-black mid-range. Now, fortunately, Woodland Cemetery would be tapped for us right now. So I decided just to gamble on an untapped black source right here with Satyr Wayfinder. Basically every land in our deck taps for black, so we do happen to hit a blood crypt, so we're able to shock that in, and basically everything works out nicely. Exile their creature, and that's it. Okay, so that was Jundergrowth in the Explorer format, and we did pretty good, went 4-1, and got to see the deck really do its thing a bunch of times, and honestly went off to some really brutal starts that just caused our opponents just to concede really early. And we had a turn 2, 7/7 Fiend Artisan. I think we got our Urborg Lhurgoyf up to 11 power. So you could see the potential in this build. Now, one thing that probably stands out is how much splashing Kroxa warps our mana base. We have to really load up a bunch of, our mana base is a little crazy trying to splash it, especially the escape cost, which needs double red. So I could definitely see an argument to cutting Kroxa entirely, cleaning up the mana base, simplifying it, packing in some more utility, maybe just switching them out for underdogs. There's definitely an argument for that. Another mode that I didn't even touch because of the color restraints are putting a bunch of MDFC creatures such as Tangled Florahedron, Kazandu Mammoth, and things like that, because it can juice your creature count in the deck while still functioning as lands. So, because they're creatures in the graveyard. So that's one thing to consider to help mill over more creatures and turbo out your self mill a little bit. And also I was thinking about, in the old days it used to run Molder Hulk, which, it has a cost reduction for Undergrowth, is a native 6/6, and can return a land from your graveyard to the battlefield. So in the old days you'd loop that with Memorial to Folly, bringing back a Molder Hulk, bringing back the Memorial to Folly, you just sacrifice to it. So, but you just didn't really have that great of enablers to get the cost down super quickly all the time. But now I feel like the enablers are so strong that this could actually maybe make it back in. So I'm really curious about that. So, but yeah, let me know in the comments what are your favorite cards that care about creatures in your graveyard. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.